Hello everyone and welcome to Shiplight's first ever virtual mega summit, Shiplight Surge 1.0, that is hosted in association with Your Story. My name is Shivani Muthana and I will be your moderator and host for the evening and the session today. And over the next 3 days, we will be gathering insights from industry experts about the current e-commerce ecosystem here in India. We'll be discussing trends, strategies, as well as the path forward and the future. So if you are a seller, retailer, or an owner of an e-commerce business, this summit, of course, is definitely not one that you should be missing out on. Now, the pandemic last year, of course, came as a reality check when it struck for most enterprises. It made major sectors reimagine and redefine the way they function to cut losses. But for the e-commerce sector here in India, the lockdown proved to be a significant turning point, a silver lining in a certain sense. As demand surged, businesses began to look for ways to cater to customers. This also led to the rise in brands opting for the direct-to-customer or D2C model. Now, experts suggest and suspect that India's D2C sector will reach and touch about $100 billion by the year 2025. In such a competitive ecosystem, how does your brand get the support it needs? And how can you successfully get funding? That, of course, is one of the key questions that we are asking. To answer this and give us more perspective, we have Bhavna Suresh, co-founder of 10 Club, as our keynote speaker today to talk about the road to D2C funding. Now, 10 Club is a one-of-a-kind startup that acquires, operates, and grows e-commerce first businesses. Bhavna's business instincts and penchant for identifying the right businesses and people make it a force that combines insights, technology, business incubation, as well as financial support to create winning brands and businesses. Bhavna is a millennial entrepreneur who has constantly broken stereotypes and displayed great prowess at building successful startups. So let me welcome Bhavna on board. Hello, Bhavna. Thank you so much for your time, and over to you for the keynote address.
Thank you, Shivani, for that warm introduction, and thanks so much for having me today. Very honored to be speaking to such a large audience. Well, where do I start? I think there's enough and more that is said about this space, said about the digital transformation that's happening, all of the noise around the last 24 months in the ecosystem. And personally, as a 3-time entrepreneur, I think it gives me a lot of pleasure to watch how the whole ecosystem is changing, right? And about just the entire energy with which people are coming up, new ideas are coming in. There's just so much potential and opportunity for people like us to come and do something and create something. But I think, taking a step back, I think we all talk about funding, money, and it's always a lot of noise and celebration around that. I think though it is a very important aspect of building a business, it's never really only that, right? I think especially in the D2C space, in the consumer goods space, especially that's something that is so native in the digital space. While I do think deep pockets are deeply advantageous, I think there's a lot more that goes into building a business. So I'll start from there, and then we can obviously go back into how I think the Indian ecosystem has changed in the last decade and what the opportunities are for entrepreneurs like us today, right? I think any business anywhere in the world, and specifically to India, has 3 different pillars to it. It's processes and capital, right? It's 3. And people process obviously is always a result of capital, but they're not mutually exclusive, right? I think it kind of goes hand in hand. And I think as the business kind of changes and the way you move from early to growth stage, I think all of these have to kind of play a critical role. And I think that's what I'd like to talk about, right? I think when you're starting off early, I think your founding team, the co-founders play such a critical role in setting the ethos in general. And then processes, right? I think that's where a lot of us break. We try keeping everything under our control, but as businesses grow, you have to evolve and your processes have to evolve. And I think then comes capital, right? And I'd love to talk a little bit more now about capital, but I think capital also, if you look at the Indian ecosystem today, I think what's changed is, a decade ago, I think there wasn't too much noise around the venture world. It was all about how do you start a venture, how do you find a sustainable route to keep it, how do you bootstrap it, right? I think for a very, very long time, it was about how do I find profits, how do I bootstrap, and how do I keep running? And I think the next lane that kind of evolved very quickly was debt. How do you kind of take a bank loan? How do you sustain yourself? That was appreciated as well. And banks actually started lending to early stage ventures, right, and SMEs in general. And that was a whole product in itself that was created. And then came the evolution of the venture capital world, right, where taking VC money it was hard, and then it was taboo for a while, and then it got normalized, and now today everybody launching is looking at it from the lens of how do I go raise some venture money. And I think today what's happened, especially in this particular sector, for sellers who sell on marketplaces, who sell in the ecosystem, right? I think there's a fourth lane that's coming to appear, and those are the businesses that we're in. That's what 10 Club does. We're an aggregator of sorts. What we do is we acquire and fully operate businesses that are e-commerce first. And the lens that I look at it is, it wouldn't be possible in an ecosystem that is too new. It's actually a sign of an evolving ecosystem, right? Where there is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to bootstrap, to take loans, to get venture capital money, but also for those who reached a particular size, and have kind of figured out a particular mode, figured out what their business opportunity is, and potentially may not want to kind of raise more capital to scale and continue the business. This is a liquidity opportunity, right? And I think that's how you look at the entire ecosystem as a whole, right? It's not an all function, it's how do all of these lanes mutually coexist, right? It's basically an ecosystem that's evolving to kind of cater to different entrepreneurs, different types of entrepreneurs who want to kind of build businesses differently, right? And there's nothing to say that nobody cannot coexist, right? I think the idea here is, how does everybody and it's also an opportunity for businesses who were bootstrapped, potentially who explored venture capital investments, didn't get it for whatever reason, and that could explore this opportunity, right? So it's not that the road ends, it's basically an opportunity where you're like, hey, it gives you more of a potential to understand along the build journey what kind of business you want to build and what is it that you're building for. You're building either to take this business for the long haul and see it all and you enjoy the process of build. But there are also entrepreneurs who build, enjoy the early stage, want a liquidity event, take some time off and then go back to build again, right? And I don't think this ecosystem has only one type. And I think that's what's trending about India. That's what's deeply, deeply exciting. And I think that being said, I think funding, we've spoken about funding and we've spoken about opportunities and capital. I think the second one that needs to be spoken about is the kind of businesses that are doing really well today, right? I mean, there's innovation across consumer spectrum, right? While I think a lot of activity in the e-commerce boom has happened around fashion and electronics and accessories, I think what's interesting now is a lot more consumer durables in smaller sectors are growing really fast, right? Whether you talk about the baby category space, in general, with a number of women coming online and spending and making spending decisions, these are categories that are booming. There's beauty, there's F&B, with the younger generation getting more conscious of what they eat and really truly understanding where their food is coming from. F&B is a category that's doing so well. And I think what's interesting about all of these businesses is there's a deep supply chain angle to it there. And unlike a lot of markets globally, I think our advantage today really is we're sitting in a market where sourcing can happen locally. Well, supply chains and access to China has been cut for global markets and they're suffering. I think India has seen a deep uptick this year. And I think therein lies the opportunity for us to go local. And, I've been talking to tons and tons of entrepreneurs who've found access to global supply chain and are really benefiting from it. And I think that's a whole different shift for it, right? Just being independent in the entire full stack spectrum. And it comes down to technology as well, right? I mean, while we did speak about processes to a large extent, I think India's challenges are so dramatically different from the world, and building our tech that caters to our needs is so important. And there's such incredible work being done in this space, right? Where if you're a D2C entrepreneur at a very early stage, there's a solution available for you across your problems, right? You don't really have to go build for it today. I think what's happening really interestingly is if you can find the right factors and the right solution for you, you really don't have to go back to innovation, right? It gives you the opportunity to focus on your product, focus on what you love doing, right? And there's always a partner who's there to kind of fulfill and help you do everything you don't like doing, right? And I think that's also the start of a change, right? Where the ecosystem is becoming large enough where you can pick what you're good at and focus on that. And then really find either partners like us who basically do everything else, or partners who kind of solve for particular needs, right? Which is, it could be logistics, it could be marketing, it could be just performance marketing, because we know a ton of people struggle with that, and there are enough solutions in our market that cater to it. I think something interesting that's coming out for the B2C space are just digitally native businesses and just tracking solutions as well, right? I mean, there's so much time and energy that goes into it and personalizing it, or whether it is studying your consumer data, right? I think it's a huge conversation. I think the understanding of a lot of digital native businesses is you now have access to so much information that every product innovation, every kind of campaign that you put out there can be backed by data. And while I think this is interesting, I think it also makes it so much more complex, because this does kind of cater to much smarter competition as well, right? And it's balancing that act of how do you continue innovating, how do you continue understanding your consumer, how do you kind of continue being not ahead of the curve, but at least with the curve, right? And how do you, I think entrepreneurship is always about innovating and trying to find something new. I think in times like today, which is where there's so much information, if you're not keeping up with it and you're not getting it right, it could kind of set you back. So I think these are all the things entrepreneurs today have to kind of think about. And well, I say it more often than not that it's a fantastic time to be an entrepreneur. Well, all of that being said, I think, like I said, there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur in India, and I think that's one of the massive reasons why 10 Club is in existence today. It's our first year of operations, and it comes from deep love for entrepreneurship, right? It comes from being an entrepreneur a few times and realizing that sometimes you're stuck in a rut, right? You're running the flywheel and you're feeling lost and confused and scared, and everything's kind of comes down to on your little shoulders. And again, it comes down to these three things, right? Capital, process, people. And people, I keep saying, right? I think good talent in the market is extremely, extremely expensive. And while a lot of businesses today can kind of optimize and use one resource and kind of, all of us can benefit from shared services. And also, I think the good thing about capital being available is sometimes all of us run in the growth projection and forget margins. So I think 10 Club came from the love of entrepreneurs, but also from the love of growing sustainable businesses, right? So what we do as a fund, a firm, we're not really sure what we're called, but we're a venture that kind of works alongside entrepreneurs, right? So if you're a business that has grown rapidly and is generally in its early stage of growth, right? So businesses that are 3 or 4 years old have been growing aggressively, but also primarily are EBIT margin positive, right? So these are entrepreneurs who looked at their bottom line and kind of built for the future and not really paid only the GMV. We partner with entrepreneurs like that, right? And what we realized is generally the entrepreneur loves one particular aspect of the business, whether that's product innovation, whether that's supply chain, whether that's marketing, right? And generally doesn't like the other parts of the business. And that's when someone like a 10 Club comes in. We basically come and acquire the business, whether it's a majority acquisition or a complete acquisition. We do this only because we take care of everything after that, right? So we take care of all the capital needs, all the working capital needs, people, process, everything's kind of done by us. And the entrepreneur gets a liquidity event. And I think that's really important to talk about in a market like India, right? If you've been an entrepreneur, you could be growing your business really, really well without seeing any financial benefit itself. And all of us have been entrepreneurs, right? Sometimes you're working so many crazy hours and you're like, where is my money? And I think that's where it comes from, right? It comes from while the entrepreneur is also rewarded for the early years of build. The way valuations are very different. Valuations are very different from that of the VC world, right? So we've had many conversations about top line valuations. I think the way we do this is we value businesses in the form of an EBIT margin multiple, right? But the valuation we do is the complete amount is paid to the founder, right? So there's no capital from that is used back into the business. So a founder has to look at this from the lens of liquidity event for them, right? But yeah, so we do anywhere between, I mean, I don't want to put a number to it. I think it depends on the business, the category, the growth. But that's how we value businesses. And the way we kind of work alongside founders is once you have this liquidity event, we then become one team, and then we integrate, we grow businesses aggressively over the next 24 to 36 months. Different founders have different needs. We have founders who come and join us full time and become part of them and not just work on their business, but work across the portfolio. We have founders who are very clear and say, hey, I love my business, but I can't work with anybody and kind of stay with us for 24 months and then decide to leave. We're open to both and we understand both sentiments. But I think that's the idea, right? How do you grow a business exponentially, but also create financial benefits for everybody involved in the ecosystem? So that's what we do at Enter. That being said, I think we talk to everybody. We're a happy bunch, and we love meeting entrepreneurs. And even if you're a very early stage venture, we'd love to speak to you because everything's growing so quickly. Who knows? For us, at the end of the day, it's all about people. So we'd love to chat. If you'd like to reach out to us and chat, drop us a message. Everything's on the website. I'm always on LinkedIn, so if you want to drop me a line, happy to say hi. Good luck and have fun building.